My name is Jeff Giddens. I am originally from Nashville, Tennessee, and I live in Dallas, Texas. I'm the Senior Vice President of Optimization for Next After. And if you're unfamiliar with our engagement, we're working with the Oblates to help grow online fundraising, acquire more names, donors, and dollars through that channel. Courtney, you want to give a...
Yeah, I've met most of you guys when we were here for our final presentation, so great to see you all again. But Courtney Gaines, Director of Optimization with Next After, and just excited to get this foundation built for you guys. Again, as we had talked about on our call, everything from here, all the initiatives that we work on with you guys will, this will be the foundation of it all. We need to secure your messaging and build upon that. So excited to do this with you guys today.
Again, I think I met most everyone. I'm Kevin Peters, SVP of Data and Strategy. And yeah.
I'm the guy.
Yeah. There you go. Leave it at that.
I'm Mike Viola, one of the writers here.
Vicky Gracie, website coordinator.
Diane Green, I'm in the charitable and planning department.
Cindy Coolio, the manager of the mailroom and donor services.
And Antigua manager IT.
Well, why don't you introduce yourself?
Will Shaw, Communications Director.
Will actually works for the U.S. province out of Washington, D.C., but we're lucky to have him in our building, so.
Cool.
He does the communications for all the outlets directly.
Oh, great.
And I'm Bill Undertile, the Director of Fundraising.
I'm Kate Brown. I'm in the creative department. I'm a graphic designer and a web designer.
Sarah, I'm a graphic designer, photographer.
Mike Lively, I'm a fundraising analyst.
Scott, graphic designer.
Michelle Delta, fundraising supervisor.
Cool. Great. All right, so I'm going to give just kind of an overview of today. I'll probably do about a 20-minute presentation just to orient everybody. Some of y'all who are in the final roadmap presentation have seen a little bit of this before. If you've been on any of our webinars or education or seen us speak at conferences, you may have seen some of these experiments and things. But we're going to walk through one of the most important things. Is one of the favorite things we do, like I said, because the value proposition is at the heart of everything that we do, whether it's communication, fundraising, people just visiting us, understanding what the Oblates do. Every piece of that touches a person outside this organization has some element of the value proposition. So it's the most important thing that we nail down. We understand there's not one value proposition for the organization. There are many different paths into it. We have to try to understand one, what resonates with our donors and with our constituents, and how they each kind of see the organization. So I'm going to do about a 20-minute presentation, and then we will break and draft what we call value claims. So we will, I'll explain this a little more in the presentation. We will try to answer the question in as many different ways as we possibly can. Why should I, if I'm your ideal donor, give to you as opposed to any other organization or not at all? And we'll come up with the because statements for that. And then we will we'll take a break, and we'll come back and print out some pages for everybody, and we'll rank those based on scale, 2 factor scale. And we'll input them, and we'll have an output, and it'll tell us kind of what the group has derived on these. So to start to understand the value proposition, we have to be oriented with a funnel. Is everyone here familiar with the idea of a marketing funnel concept? It's a very helpful concept. We found it very helpful. We're trying to get people into our website through all these different channels and move them from interest to involvement to investment, from prospects to donors to lifelong advocates. And we thought this way for a long time, and went to a conference where we met some guys from a company called Met Labs. They work with Fortune 100 companies, some of the biggest companies in the world. And they said, we were interested in what they had to offer, because as you well know, sending out a fundraising appeal, you typically are looking at response rates between 1% and 10%, which is a 90 to 99% failure rate. We said, well, if we're in fundraising and we want to do this for the rest of our lives, we either spend the rest of our lives failing, or we can figure out how to optimize this and make those conversion rates better. And MedLabs is doing some of the most pioneering work in at the concept of marketing and sales optimization. We said, I wonder if any of this would apply to fundraising. So they've done all this research, 1 billion emails tested, 10,000 sales paths. They've done 5 million phone calls, so they've logged, recorded all these phone calls, trying to understand what makes people say yes and engineer more yeses into these sales funnel organizations like the New York Times, Google, and a lot of Horizon, and a lot of big companies. They said, the funnel is a very useful analogy. It's helpful to understand. You have this large audience that you first get to touch, and as people progress towards making a donation or a sale or whatever it is, fewer of them take those steps because we need to understand why that's happening so we can encourage more of them to take the next step. They said the primary problem with it is it actually distorts reality. People are not falling into your funnel. Gravity is not working for you, it's working against you. So natural forces like attention deficit, like other forms of marketing, are working against us. And if we're actually going to understand the mindset that our donors are reading our communications, and we have to put the communication in context. We have to understand that they have things that are pulling them away from this. And also, the difference, one thing that we've kind of understood as we've done more of this research is with fundraising particularly, people don't want to give. As humans, we are not wired to give away our money, even in a good economy. People don't like giving money away. We know that it leads a good end, right? And it's virtuous. God's called us to do that. It's called us to hold our belongings hold them loosely. But people, it's not natural for people to want to do that, especially when you don't get anything tangible in return, right? So if you're going to buy something, if you're going to buy lunch today, you eventually have to eat something, so you have to make that decision. But people don't have to give, so it's a very unique thing in fundraising that we have to deal with. It's not necessarily a requirement. So we understood that the funnel is, if you look at the funnel upside down, it's a more accurate picture, and we have to actually move people up this funnel. We've kind of adapted this, and we call it donor mountain now, because it's a climb. As we know, fewer people will make it to the summit than will make it to all the different stages in between. And we also realized that there's not really one way up. People give to the same organization for many different reasons. Everyone kind of has it's like a kaleidoscope. They kind of have a different view that they're looking into the organization. It's very personal. And the more that we can understand the heart of our donors, the better response rates we get from our fundraising. And honestly, the stronger bonds we can create with donors. It's not just about what we can get, it's about how we can bless them by allowing them to release their hold on their money and support this organization. So with this inverted funnel, we realized there's an ultimate thing we're trying to get people to do, which is make a gift, or in our case, that's called what we call a macro yes. And along the way, there are all these micro yeses, these tiny little steps. So if I send you an email, the first thing you have to do is open it, right? So the subject line has to compel you to open it, right? But you can't just game that, because if they open it and realize the content of the email has nothing to do with the subject line, then they'll fall off, And we want them to open it and click it, right? And then get to the landing page and read the first headline piece of copy, the first paragraph of copy, and keep progressing. Eventually, there may be a call to action like donate. We want them to continue to be propelled through that process with significant momentum, so they will complete the intended macro yes transaction. And the force that propels people through this is the message. The essence of all marketing is the message. And the essence of the message is the value proposition. So you can write a lot of words, but you have to understand that at the core of that is this value proposition. And one of the best ways to view it is like this. There's a scale, right? And every decision somebody makes has a cost and a value. And so what we're trying to do is take each piece of this journey that we send our donors on when we send them a communication and move it from cost-heavy, value-light to value-heavy, cost-light. We want to help them understand and give them the perception that doing this has a lot of value and it costs you very little in the long run. So let me show you how this kind of plays out. If we have, if we're able to affect different parts of the what we call the flux capacitor of online revenue maximization, so traffic, conversion rate, and average gift, if we can actually affect those through the value proposition, we can, it becomes very easy to start to sketch out things like how do we double our revenue, how do we get more response from the fundraising pieces that we're already sending. Let me show you a heuristic, if you will, that Mech Labs put together that we use. May look a little funny at first because we're applying scientific principles to marketing, but it really gives us a framework to understand what's happening in the brain, the mind, and the heart, really, of the donor as we talk to them. So this one says, I'll read it left to right, says the conversion is equal to 4 times the motivation of the donor, plus 3 times the clarity of the value proposition, plus 2 times the incentive minus friction, minus 2 times anxiety. What that means is there are factors that we can actually affect as we start to look at how do we get more conversions, how do we get more people to say yes and make a gift. The number one factor is motivation, because it has a coefficient of 4. And honestly, motivation is the most powerful, but it's also the hardest to affect. Sometimes people come in highly motivated to give a gift. And we've seen in all the testing optimization that we do that highly motivated donors, it's really hard to get them to be even more motivated than they are. Sometimes these will be the people who respond first, right? So you send an email out, and these are kind of the center of the bullseye. These are people who are going to give to you, and you know, they're highly motivated anyways, and we call them low-hanging fruit, possibly. But not everyone is going to be like that. In fact, most people aren't. So we have to look at the rest of this framework to understand the next most impactful element that we have is the clarity of the value proposition. And it's not just having a strong value proposition, it has to be expressed clearly. Because you can have the strongest value proposition in the world, but if people don't understand it and aren't able to process it, it won't actually have the effect that we want to have. There are other factors like incentive, why should I give right now? Friction, how difficult or how long or how time consuming is it to give? Anxiety, do I trust this organization? Are they believable? And when you look at donation pages, you kind of see all of these different things. Let me show you an example. This is an organization we were working with that had been around since 1897. And they'd always been a small academic organization. They came and they said, can you help me grow online revenue? We began value proposition testing at the Texas State Historical Association. Turns out people like Texas history. But they had this landing page. This is their membership sign-up page. I think you should be able to kind of generally see it. When we looked at this landing page, they said, how do we make this better? So we went back to the heuristic we just looked at, and we said, you know, people who are motivated to come here, they're going to get here by clicking a donate button, so it kind of showed some original intent there. But let's examine the value proposition on this page. So if you can read it, this top line of copy right here says, you're invited to join thousands of others who believe in creating a future for your past. Yeah, there's something to that. First of all, it says there's thousands of others, you know, kind of puts you in context of you're not the only person who's a member of this. And you believe in creating a future for your past. That's kind of like marketing language. I'm not sure if that's entirely clear. Knowing the organization, I understand what it means, but trying to put ourselves in the mind of the person who's just arriving here can be a little difficult. Then they have these 4 membership options: friend, institutional, contributor, and sponsor. I'm not really sure what those are, how they're different. I guess I have to click through to find out. They have the shopping cart process. They had this value proposition down here. We wrote the book on Texas history. It's actually great. It tells the history of the organization. You know, the problem is it's actually below where you're trying to get people to make that decision. And so we said, hey, let's develop a treatment. And you can see this. This is on our in our research library on the website. If you want to read all of this copy. We said, our primary hypothesis is that the value proposition is not properly expressed. It's not clear enough. And so we wrote a ton of copy to try to illuminate every possible angle of why someone would give and become a member of the Texas State Historical Association. And it turned out to be quite a long page. These are not the same height. This is actually multiple pages. And it starts with giving insider access to the most exclusive Texas history club in the world. And it goes down to list all the benefits, why someone tells the history, why someone should join, tells them what they get. It breaks out all the different membership levels and all these things. And we saw it, after we tested this for a couple weeks, 146.5% increase in donor conversion rate. And this is what membership looked like as we started to kind of throw fuel on this fire and attract more people to this cause, this organization. We started to see this compound. And the cool thing is it's not just one thing you do over time. Value propositions can be tested and continually refined. Because as long as you're not receiving a 100% conversion rate, there are people out there who remain it's necessary to convince them. So over time, this resulted in a 733% increase in new donors per month, which seems gaudy. These numbers down here were pretty significant numbers, but to see them continue to grow like that, this is what we love. This is a great example of what we call somewhat cracking the code, right? Once you start to understand why people give, it's very, very powerful when you actually start to see and feel the results. And the interesting thing is, a lot of organizations, will say, we know our value proposition, right? We know what it is. We know why people give, and it may be very well understood within this building, and that may be correct. So this is incorrect. Sometimes the organizational logic does not match up with the donor logic. And the only way to do that is to actually test these and take these value propositions to the donors. But sometimes the organization is right, and you guys know exactly why your donors give, but it turns out your communications don't adequately express that or make it clear enough for people. And so we're in the pursuit of clarity, and that's what we're going to try to do today, to understand all the different angles and ways and reasons that someone might give to this organization. So let me show you this. Some of y'all may have seen this. This is Senator John Cornyn, Texas. We don't work on political campaigns typically, but we had a friend who was the campaign director, and he said, hey, this is getting a really bad conversion rate. A lot of people are showing up this page and they're not getting. Look at the page, it says make a donation. This is what you come to after you click donate. So we're like, people have expressed some intent, right? But most donation pages have less than a 50% conversion rate. And this one was less than 5%. So we said, how do we get more people to give? We said, well, there's not much to convince. If you're coming to this page and you have not yet made up your mind to give, there's not much on this page to convince you to give. There's a picture of a senator leaning on a fence, which if you're a politician, I think the last thing you want to do is be on the fence about something. But this is primary donation page. There's minimal copy, and we're assuming that everyone is already made up their mind to give, and we just have to, hold out the plate, right? Catch it. So we said, what if we did an experiment with this? We went and we took copy from the rest of his website and brought it onto this page. We said, what if we didn't assume that they were properly convinced? What if we needed to bolster that? And, had all this extra space here, so we just inserted a column here, move all this stuff over. We changed the headline from make a donation to stand with John Cornyn. We had a copy giving all the reasons of support. We added evidentials, which is an essential part of this process. Because you can make claims of value, but if you don't have facts to back them up, the donor will not believe you in most cases. So we need both the value claim and the evidential. We'll walk through some of those today. You can see the control of the treatment here. There's a 258.1% increase in conversion rate. Just by taking copy that was elsewhere on the site, we didn't write anything new, and putting it on the donation page. Here's another really quick one we'll do. This is an organization called Caring Bridge. Some of y'all have been to Caring Bridge sites before. People are sick, and they can set up a site to stay in touch with their loved ones. They had this year-end campaign, Your Gift Makes a Wonderful Difference. And the campaign was called Wonderful. It was kind of a funny spelling. We're like, I don't think people understand what that means. I mean, a marketing agency came up with it. It sounds great. So we changed it, and we said, hope and healing start with you. We gave an actual value proposition. We gave a quote from a person that wasn't in the organization that talked about how much it affected them. And we saw 127.6% increase in conversion rate. This was actually in December, when most organizations raise, greater than 50% of their total annual revenue. So this was a huge impact on revenue when you're able to clearly articulate the value proposition. That is what we're going to try to drill down on. And the reason I'm so glad that we have so many people in here is because everyone has different angles and obviously different personal reasons why your organization is worthy of support. And we want to get them all out. And then what we're going to do is walk through and rank them based on some factors that I'll walk through here in a second. And then we'll discuss them. Then we're all going to go around and read out our scores. And what's fun is we'll get some people who say, I don't think that's very appealing at all. Some people say, I think it's very appealing, and then we can understand why. Like I said, we're in the pursuit of clarity. That's what we're going to spend the rest of the time today doing is clarifying the value proposition and creating some hypotheses that we can go test through digital communications with your donors to get a better understanding of who responds to them and how powerfully they respond. So if you remember, we have this value force and this cost force. We're trying to tip them. There are 4 factors, really, to measure the force of the value proposition. Appeal, which is, I like this, I want this. Do we think this actually appeals to our ideal donor? Exclusivity, can they get this anywhere else? This is a struggle for a lot of nonprofits. They like to sometimes act like they're not in competition for donor dollars. They say, there are a lot of great organizations that do a lot of great work worthy of support, but what is it that you do either uniquely or individually? Because perception of exclusivity matters as well. Sometimes our donors think that we're not the only ones. We have to tell them. Credibility, do they believe us? We say this is what we do. How do we reinforce credibility? A lot of times that can be done better through someone outside the organization saying it than the organization saying itself. And then clarity, they actually understand it. So we're going to try to tip these value proposition force, like we said, cost heavy, value light to value heavy, cost light. There's a special relationship I want to talk about really quick between appeal and exclusivity. If we find a value claim we think our donors will really respond to, and every organization can say the same thing, and it's actually not that appealing, right? So we always say you take appeal and divide it by exclusivity. Because if you have something that's 100 on the appeal scale, but also 100% of organizations can say it, then you get a net score of 1. However, if you get something that's very appealing and you are the only ones that can say it, then you get a really, really high net score there. So that's what we're going to be looking at, is what is it that the oblates can uniquely say, right? What is it that, there may be some stuff that we share with other organizations, that's fine. But what is it that your organization does uniquely, or how do we actually say it in a way that presents it as unique and somewhat exclusive? There's also a relationship and perception between clarity and credibility. Perceived credibility. There's always a gap because people can't come. Most donors don't have the opportunity to come and investigate true credibility. So we have to create that perception for them. We have to give them honest quotes, honest statistics, honest credibility indicators. So if our forms are secure, we have to tell them they're secure. We obviously don't want to tell them they're secure if they're not secure, right? But they are, so we should show them and help them understand and create perception, or increase the perception, rather, not create the perception, increase the perception of clarity and credibility. We always say it, and this is like a sentence, a way to say this: you must understand what you do, so I can believe that only you can accomplish what I want to with this gift, if that makes sense. So number one, we're going to talk about the value proposition question. Then we're going to identify 5 to 10, probably more actually, with the number of folks we have in this room, claims of value. We're going to rate these based on exclusivity and appeal on a 1 to 5 scale. We'll walk through that when we get to that point. And then we're going to, I think these last two will probably happen after today. We're going to identify evidentials for each of these. So what are the facts that support these value claims? If we say that we're the only organization that does this, how do we actually support that with provable facts? And then finally, we're going to create a clear argument that is not a copy document, but it is kind of a Rosetta Stone of copy that we can draw a copy from. And then we will create a survey and test that with our donors to try to understand and get some data behind what causes them to respond. Any questions about this? Cool. This is, like I said, this is one of my favorite things we do, because this is where kind of the rubber meets the road a little bit. We get to really crystallize what's at the heart of all of our marketing and fundraising. So the question that we have to answer, and I will scribe on our papers here. The question that we have to answer today is this one. It says, if I am your ideal donor, why should I give them Andy or Oblates rather than some other organization or no one at all? Like I said before, if you're buying a meal and you're trying to answer this question, why should I buy from this restaurant or that restaurant? Eventually you're going to have to answer that question. Our donors don't have necessarily the urgency unless we give it to them to give. So they have the third option of not donating at all, right? If you're trying to buy cell phone service, you're trying to say Verizon or AT&T, right? Why should I give to this one, or why should I sign up for this one versus that one? I'm going to need to do one eventually. But the trick of fundraising is that they have a third option, which is not to give. So I'd love to hear, these responses to these statements should start with the word because, but this is where I want to start going around the room, and feel free just to fire them up, listing value claims. There are no wrong answers here. What we usually find is that the early ones, we kind of get stronger as we go along because people start to, bounce these off each other. But who wants to be the first to take a stab at answering this question in a short sentence?
The folks sitting around the table, if you would speak up more than you normally would for the camera mic, please.
Well, I'll speak up without knowing a thing, just so everybody can take a shot at it, and then get the There we go. Somebody's got to put some on a piece of white paper.
Yeah.
Because we give you the best good giving experience, and your gift will make a life-saving difference.
You said the best good giving experience?
Yeah. or a satisfactory or satisfying or fulfilling, maybe those are different words, good giving experience.
I'm actually going to break those into two.
Okay?
One is we give you the best good giving experience. Number two is we make a life-saving difference.
Yeah, your gift, your support, your affiliation with us.
Great. Nice.
Now, don't ask me for the evidentials.
One thing about the Oblates is that they're known for their difficult missions, and they go to places that most people don't go, and usually they go there first, and they rarely get credit for it. But they're big on making people self-sufficient. They don't go to take over and you know, change everybody, but they want to show people how to take care of themselves. I think that's honorable.
I think there are two in their background, so it's not only that they go to where no one else wants to go.
Difficult missions, yeah.
Yeah. And then the second one, you got that down?
Yeah, take care of themselves, self-sufficiency, right?
Right,
Yeah, self-sufficiency.
yeah. Teach them how to fish.
How do they teach the self-sufficiency?
Well, usually, I mean, it depends where they are. Like in Zambia, they have farming, and they have started a radio station, and they're actually teaching them how to raise funds for themselves. They're fundraising on their own, so they started their own like print shop and stuff like that. So.
They teach them entrepreneurship. Support them.
And through education, you know, they offer education. So they're big on starting a local order of priests, like in Zambia. They now have a full-blown province of their own. They're still, the U.S. province is still helping them. They haven't quite let them loose yet, but they're almost there to where they're going to be on their own. And they've done that in the Philippines, right? It used to be run by the U.S. province while they step back and let the Philippines will take over and do their own thing. So they direct them education.
And they're training priests in the locations they're going to.
Yeah.
Recruiting them.
We train.
Say that again.
Train, recruit.
And, you know.
I mean, they're building a seminary.
Yeah, a phenomenon is that, you know, the priesthood is down in the United States, and a lot of these missionary places are now coming to the United States to help preach here because of the shortage of priests.
And they also build schools, not just for future oblates, but for children who need education as well.
Build schools for children, education.
This is free form along what Bill said. As they go into places that are crummy, as missionaries, they do lead, so the people aren't dependent on them. But as part of the missionary, as they understand themselves, they also provide a legacy of the native folks taking care of themselves with future missionaries and being able to train their own future missionaries.
So they create missionaries.
Yes, they create
Yeah.
formation
Missionaries.
programs for the
Yeah.
local populace to move forward. That's, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
I'm not
No,
advocating,
that's-
it's just what I think Bill was, that's what I took from
Yeah,
it.
when they do that, they live right in community with the underprivileged or
That's
the
true.
poor, or wherever they're at.
Yeah, and they're in some rough places, Sri Lanka, India.
Turkmenistan.
Turkmenistan, the first Catholic priest ever ordained in Turkmenistan.
Belleville,
So-
San Antonio.
Really some rough areas. Really rough
Let me get a coffee
areas.
cup, I'm not running away.
Really,
So, well, what you're starting to see happen here, this is really cool, is we're already doing it. So when we said people are climbing up the sides of the funnel, there's a lot of different ways to this. There may be one of these reasons that a donor gives. And, you know, once we have this down, we can actually understand why that person gives and start to do more segmentation based on that. But this is a great start. Keep going. What else?
Because we've been doing it longer than anybody else.
Yeah, very good.
How long?
Yeah, it's like give a specific time.
It's 200 years, right?
200 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's our anniversary, it's 17
Oh, it's 17 now, that's right.
Anniversary this year, so.
Yep.
Okay.
I'd say a really large reason that our current donors give is because they have been touched by an oblate, gone to school where oblates have been there, or parishes that have connections to oblates.
Great. So, how would you say that, if I'm your ideal donor, I give you because oblates, people are able to personally interact with them?
Personal connections.
Well,
with
like
priests.
more of a history, like
Yeah.
if their parents had been taught or had an oblate in the parish, or they have just known the oblates for.
So you may say the oblates have generational impact, or create long-standing relationships?
I like the ones that-
Yeah.
That's pretty accurate.
You can hang it on any wall you want to.
Right here.
Yeah, we're done with the presence now, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think you can include too that it's not just necessarily a relationship personally with them, but if they have a family member or a friend, somebody who they know who falls in that category, a lot of times they'll donate or, come aboard as
So
well.
you might say that,
Kind of word of mouth, I don't know how you want to say it. They may get a card from a donor or something like
Through
that.
prayers or
Yeah,
prayer requests or
prayers.
stuff?
so it's
Do
almost,
people donate to the missionaries themselves? Or is it to the organization as a whole?
To the organization.
To the organization.
Okay, there's not, okay.
missionary support, okay.
Now, there's some projects that, we actually get the approval to raise funds for, like, few and far between, try to get away from that.
And it's more the project, not the person, too.
Right.
They'll give to oblates because of a person, but not to the person.
So you might say that, I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase that, it's really good, because not everyone can say that. It's really the factor that, but you're not even exclusively saying about missionaries, you're saying donors too, right? People connect, they have friends who are donors, recruit fellow donors.
They have friends who know oblates that have a personal connection. So through that conversation, they feel more connected and trustworthy of the oblates. I mean, through the phones, I feel a lot of people donate because they believe that the oblates truly follow through on their prayer intentions and the novenas that we offer, that we truly do what we say we do.
Some of these value plans may actually end up being better evidentials than value plans. We'll find as we go through. We've already saw one over there that I think is actually more of a fact that supports something else. But it's great to get all this out. Keep going. What else?
I think that was an important point. And number 11 is really that you follow through on the work being done at all the different aspects, from the prayer to the work, to the actual missionary work.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the fact that we have a shrine, and there's another shrine in San Antonio where they, a lot of the things that we say they do at the shrine. All the prayer and all the services are at the shrine, so.
We might need to drill down on that one a little bit. That's a big point. In fact, a lot of the research shows that most people don't give to charities because they don't trust them, right?
Right.
And so trust is a huge factor. We may need to get a little more specific, and we can once we kind of rank these.
Yeah,
Yes?
what Bill's saying and the team is, they will actually do live streaming of events to show people to back up that claim.
Yeah, we really, and we don't make claims in our church. We make sure that it's been that way since I've been here. We don't make up stories. The stories are real. And, Mike's in touch with the oblates to get these stories. I mean, when you have 350 guys out there, there's a lot of stories to be told. So.
If you're missing a big reason they give is because they get a present, right? They get a rosary, they get a statue. You can give $50 to an ascension.
All these reasons are why we're investors. I don't know how clearly we communicate that, and I mean, by and large, all our other donors, the majority gives was for parenthood, premiums, even homeless.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting though, because that's where a lot of relationships start, right? But I think what we might find, and what we've seen happen before, is the more that we actually deliver this value proposition, they can understand it's not just about the thing, right? There's this
Right.
whole thing surrounding this
You
whole.
asked, kind of, why do they give to us and not the dissensions? I think a big reason is because we give them a rosary and the dissensions don't give them a rosary.
Yeah.
I think that's probably like the biggest things we need to talk about is currently our ideal donor is actually not 100% in line with the oblate values and actions. Our current donors are from that great generation, the traditional Catholics who are devotional. They go to church every single week without fail because they have to. They do novenas, they send enrollments, they are doing everything by the book that they were taught in their generation to do. The oblates are a little more modern, not that they, that you can't slack off necessarily, but, it's a little less rigid, it's a little more modern, it's a little more, support the poor and work with the people. So I think that's where we've really been struggling now is that, as things are evolving, that great generation is dying off, and the new boomer generation actually is more in line with the oblate ideals, but we don't reach out to them currently in our fundraising efforts.
So, explain the thing that I want you to illuminate is why draw the connection more between the boomer generation and oblates and why that is a more likely connection.
So I think, when we were brainstorming the other day, we separated who our current donor is and who the future concepts are, which is really more in line with where the oblates are. They're more open and inclusive of all faiths. Over at the shrine, they'll have, people of other faiths, Islamic and Jewish and other Christian religions, have talks and talk about how faiths work together. The teaching self-sufficiency, like we talked about, go into a poor area, work with them and teach them to be self-sufficient so that they can be on their own. They do a lot with social justice and environmental concerns. We've got JPIC.
These are things you're currently doing.
These are things that the oblates
I
are
think
doing.
sometimes in these discussions we get a little futuristic, like kind of designing the organization that we want to be. But if these are those value claims are just going to stand up. So these stand up, and I think we've got probably 4 or 5 right
The
here.
justice, justice of peace, or what's
Yeah, the
that?
JPIC,
JPIC is.
they're huge. I mean, they're right in Washington DC, and I guess he was the founder of it. I don't know if he's the first, but Seamus, I mean,
Yeah.
he's been a superstar anyway. He's fighting the hedge funds and stuff like that, where what they do is they tell you who you should put your money with. People that are doing just things and good causes. So if you're going to invest money, invest it in this group and that group. Don't invest it in these people. Kind of thing. So there's a whole organization out there for wealthy Catholics. I get the emails all the time. Not that I'm a wealthy Catholic, but
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Is it only wealthy Catholic?
I mean, is it-
They
is it-
fight that.
No, not JPIC. This is the other.
That the lower
Investing.
aren't getting, just
Oh yeah.
beat
yeah.
upon, that
And-
those social justice are
Right,
bad,
and some of these hedge funds are promoting, bad things that are anti-poor person.
Exactly, yeah.
So, that's what Seamus tries to stay on top of.
Is Seamus part of your
He's an
organization?
oblate, yeah.
He's
not
not
really,
yeah, and he's
Seamus
really
Finn.
good, I mean,
And then he's got his.
he's a
his
supporter
Ponce.
of fundraising, yeah. And they have a blog, and they have a really, really interesting website. You guys should check it out, the JPIC.
You have to be careful because if you go on there right now, it says we oppose the wall and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, they're
It is a very
political. They are political, yeah. So it is
and
kind
our donors
of,
are not.
There's going to be a way to say, like, we engage in, I think there's a there's a way that appeals, there's a way to say it that appeals to people regardless of politics.
Right.
And I
That's
think that's what you're hitting on, is social
We were
justice is a
thinking
way to
more about
encapsulate that.
environmental.
Yeah, because they're inclusive, you know, they're, right now, we're talking about, you know, stopping the immigrants. They're just the opposite. They want more immigrants and help more people, so, you know, that's who they are and what they are.
How would you say that? If you had to say it in a sentence, how would you sum that up? Because,
The whole social justice aspect of it, or
yeah,
the.
Give hints.
So JPIC stands for Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation, right? So, how would you sum that? I think the oblates are working with the people to better their lives. You know, to better their personal and economic situations as well as filling their spiritual needs. There's something they talk about
well,
where
you might also say something like,
you know, like, I think, you know, it's important. It's important that you go to church and have your spiritual life filled, but if you haven't eaten in 3 days, you can't sit through a mass. So they're all about like taking care of your physical needs as well as your spiritual needs.
Yeah, they do organic farming. They have a organic farm here called La Vista. That's all about the environment, spirituality, one with nature.
with some of that, you may be even jumping a generation, you know? I think
Yeah.
that goes past
Yes.
boomers into
And
like.
see, we're not
Generation
connecting
Y.
with those people. That's the people that we're not connecting with. So, you know, that's what Michelle was saying, where we have, what we currently have as our donors, the old devotional Catholics who unfortunately are dying off at alarming rates. And then what we'd like to do is to get some of those boomers that maybe care about this stuff, you know, where they were not so much, more traditional.
Yes.
Because I like what Michelle is trying to communicate, and I like the way we're giving you the chance to try and own it, to try and frame it. I think that's an important part. Could I, more of the commentary, and then you can say, no, it's BS, Ken, is we perceive that we are in a transition of a variety of constituencies, or we're in transition with an ideal constituency, but also we perceive we're being asked to consider these constituencies, perhaps embryonic and as yet not well formed or understood, that have a variety of characteristics, some of which are these.
Is there a value claim in that,
Well, I wanted to, I'm not trying to take words out of your mouth, but I think that's the paradox or perception that we're trying to make sense of, because the characteristics of some of the constituencies are generational, channel communication, messaging, well-formed, and some are not as well-formed yet, and we're not sure even how the ROI, how that works as far as a donor and ideal.
but I'm saying, what I was hinting at is that may be a value claim in itself, that oblates don't just do things the old way. I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth, tell me if there's a better way to say it, but you're
that's
just
very-
bound to
it's very
traditions, you're actually
true.
trying to further the mission, like develop new ways of executing on your mission.
They almost have too much stuff going on. You know, they're not focused like some of the organizations, you know, they're all about, kids with cancer or, you know, St. Jude's Hospital, or very focused, where the oblates have so many things going on. And they're very much driven by an individual oblate. And that's what they kind of do. They kind of let guys go out there and do their thing. So there's so many things going on, it's almost hard to
Well, that may be a value claim in itself if you can make the if you can make it clear enough. Maybe that it's because you have a deep bench or roster of oblates, like you're able to actually impact in a lot of different areas. I mean, because you're right, some organizations can't say that.
Right.
And say some of them are very local too, especially in the Catholic world. You know, it's like this diocese is who we serve, right? So maybe there's something to say like maybe this to get into exclusivity, if we can say it truthfully, which everything should be said truthfully. We can find the facts to back it up. Is that Oblates has one of the most wide-ranging impacts, widely felt impacts of any Catholic organization. Would that be reasonable?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That's good.
Is that a more recent effort? Or has that been evolving over a long period of time?
Oh, well, Ken can speak to that.
No, don't put me on the spot.
By the way, he didn't introduce himself.
No.
That's Ken
Yeah.
Amerson from San Antonio, and he's a fundraising, he's kind of taking Father Jim Chambers' spot as Father Billy's right-hand person. And Rick Munzie is in charge of the programmers. He's jumping back and forth between San Antonio and Belleville. But Ken was their fundraising director in San Antonio for 30 years. So he's got a long history with the Oblates. So now I really put him on the spot.
Yeah, well, let me put it, I'm impressed that within 45 minutes, you guys have stumbled into this great discussion. Because that's a little bit of what our team here is working through, a wealth of. And so to talk about what Bill and especially Michelle brought up was there is a phenomenal amount of activity going on within the Oblates. Now the question whether it's recent or not could be discovered more.
But they've been doing this kind of stuff for a long time. Right?
It's part of their characteristic as missionaries. When they were founded in the 1800s, this guy in France had founded them, was sending missionaries all over the face of the world, and he never had enough. I mean,
it goes back to their founder,
so
St.
that's
Eugene.
kind of the way they do missionary work. They just
Right.
kind of go wherever they don't think. I mean, it's not that they don't think, but they just will respond
Maybe over God's thought.
wherever the
Yeah.
need is.
Well, I think there's also a
Need is.
disqualifying piece in there.
Okay.
Like, support Oblates, but they might support Oblates because the Oblates, because we don't just have the impact in one specific area. Because we believe that the world is a mission field.
Well,
And
that's
send-
kind of a mission
send them
statement
accordingly.
from Justice Pete, actually changing it around a little bit, but the Oblates in the U.S., that they advocate on behalf of the poor and the abandoned in the United States and throughout the world.
Yeah. And they believe that and do that.
Part of their formation training is a soundbite, that is they will have zeal to leave no stone unturned, which means they get into a lot of situations that they might stop and pause, but they'll still keep going forward.
Jeff made a comment that's worth explaining a little bit of the disqualifying nature of this. It's not everyone is your ideal donor. If you try to cater to everyone, you're going to be catering to no one because
Right.
you're trying to be too broad.
Right.
And so being able to narrow in and say, these are the people that would support us is critical. And somebody that really cares just about kids' cancer, you're not going to support you, even if you are helping provide medical treatment and surgery. So that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing to say this is who we're going after.
And that's kind of the focus on the transition. Is, you know, who is that?
Yeah, who's the next?
And I think we need to do that. You know, the Oblates are asking us, especially the Belleville location, to change its donors. You know, and they want more inclusive donors coming on board. You know, and,
Yeah, trade-offs. Value proposition forces us to make trade-offs.
Right.
That's okay, you know, because we're not the United Way, right? We don't do everything under the sun. Sometimes, like, those types of value propositions are kind of like, you know, you throw a wet paper towel on a wall, it just sort of falls off. It doesn't really stick because it's not highly impactful and they can't understand clarity, right? They didn't have a ton of clarity. What else? I think we're on a roll here. Any other reasons? I mean, a lot of y'all talked to
Initially,
them.
but once a donor gives, I believe that they become kind of part of the Oblate family, and we treat them really special, especially in my department. We have people go visit donors. I know Donor Services does a lot of personal phone calls,
Right.
and people thanking them.
We have-
Dr. John gives.
Yeah, we have donors that send gifts to our representatives. They like our representatives.
Yeah, they're the first touch with the donors. You know, when they first become donors, is Cindy's gals. And they're very good
I think
at
we're good at nurturing
talking.
some people,
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Making them feel special, yeah.
There's another, that's a great point, because I want to call this out too. We shouldn't just be thinking about value propositions that are the tip of the spear
Right.
that should convince people. This is something that can be actually told after someone becomes a donor. You can write an email that says, you know what, like, you're not just a donor, you are family.
Right.
We want to connect with you, and here's a person, if you want to call me on the phone, here's my desk, you know, you can actually start to make value propositions at different
The word
stages of the life.
co-missionaries coming into my head, you know, and that's a true statement, you know, that they ask for people to be co-missionaries and help, especially nowadays, because there's not enough priests, you know, so they need help from lay people.
That we pray for you around the world, and you become part of the prayer.
Yeah, the prayers around the world is definitely a strong thing too. There's a calendar that the province sets up every year where oblates in different countries are praying for you every single day. You know, 7 to 10 days spans each
All over the world.
area around the
Awards,
world
yeah,
is
different
praying
things.
for the donors.
There's a global,
Give me that in a sentence.
there's a global association she's talking about, and it's regionalized every week around the world.
So it's kind of a global community prayer.
So because, I should give to you because our, what's it, network, what's the word we're trying to say?
Yeah.
It's the order of priests, and that's the bigger order, that's the 2,000 oblates. There's the U.S. provinces who we raise funds for, but they're all part of the oblates as a whole. And the oblates as a whole, these 2,000 oblates around the world, they're the ones that we're talking about now.
Yeah.
They're all over the world, and they're praying, you
Yeah, so
know,
For the donors.
they all pray for the
They provide
donors,
a global network of prayers.
specifically for the donors.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's because the oblates around the world are praying for you.
Yeah, and that's, people are looking for what
What's the information,
what they get out of it.
Yeah.
what they get.
I mean, not necessarily
Yeah.
selfishly, but.
No,
He just
yeah.
cut 'em in
And that's
half.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I know, I was like.
Well, then maybe you might be incredibly unique too.
I
The
was
Oblates
like,
are the
there
only
must have been a lot of this.
missionary organization where there's kind of this virtuous cycle, right? We send missionaries to go do this work, but our missionaries also,
Well, the
Return
thing is
something.
that St. Eugene, the one that founded the order of priests, the oblates, his first function was to develop fundraisers. And they called them the Missionary Association of Mary Immaculate. And they were lay people that helped support his missionaries to go out. So the very beginning of the organization started that way. So it reached out to, to send missionaries off. And they went to Canada. It's an awesome story. But they have the cavalry, which I have a picture hanging in my office. And they have a beautiful stone statue down in San Antonio of these 10 oblates or whatever on horseback that came from Canada all the way down to the wild, wild west of Texas. I mean, these guys were cool riding on horses like cowboys, and bringing the Catholic faith, wherever they went.
is there something, the value proposition in that? There's something there.
Yeah, it really is an awesome story.
But how can you, without telling the story, how can you say what happened in the story? Because I think it's actually pretty unique.
Yeah.
How would you describe that? Without telling me the entire story, how would you say the kind of thrust or reason behind what they did?
Well, that they spread evangelism, with zeal, and again, in places that most people won't go. And that's, here in the United States and throughout the
I think
world.
it's actually add-on number 8. We've been spreading evangelism with
Yeah.
zeal, doing this.
Yeah.
Because I think if we had to say we've been doing this for more than 200 years, there are a ton of organizations that can say that.
Right.
I mean, across the board, hospitals can say that, right? But
83 combined.
you're right, yeah. We've been, spreading the Catholic faith with zeal. When you got that, and then
What about in America? We've heard a lot about the international mission, but I've heard of the work being done in America.
Michael?
Yeah, I mean, the oblates that we support, actually, many of them are in the US. They've got, what, the retreat center, there's multiple retreat centers.
New Orleans.
Well, that's
Yeah, New Orleans.
Parish,
Prisons,
Prison work.
quite a few of the good ones that we wrote about are gone, so
Yeah.
Miami's gone.
Tony's still bearing.
Yeah, that's not an outlet parish. But, I mean, there's some in Texas.
What about
is it common among evidentiary claims in the US?
Like, you're saying they're doing work in the US. What was a claim that was made? What, like, I heard prison outreach.
Right.
What are the types of things being done in the US? Because a lot of people give internationally, and they also want to give domestically as well. So these are two different.
Tree houses and shrines, parishes.
They have a,
Four schools and stuff like that.
they're in an Indian reservation
Just
called,
an example of that, it's like a third of what it was. 5
yeah,
years
but
ago.
it's still happening. It's not as glorious.
One way maybe is the mission, their sense of missionary, I'll just take a shot here in the dark, maybe their sense of missionary involvement in the present US would be with the poor and marginalized, and that would be expressed in locations where poor and marginalized people are,
Right.
doing what they are.
It's evangelizing. it
So it'd be
as well.
evangelized, yeah. So the
So
poor,
it's bringing Christ to
Even in
it's
the
not
US.
already in prisons,
Yeah.
in organizations, in
Uh,
poor and underserved.
youth.
Yeah, we've
So
got
it's almost
some-
the
Children.
inverse of what Michelle was saying earlier. In terms of social justice, you also have to say the other part of that, right? As you said, we work to better the economic and physical realities as well as meeting spiritual needs. We have to say we meet spiritual needs, and we take evangelism to where it currently isn't, right?
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a corollary to number 3, but I think I'm going to list it out separately.
I think it'll probably be an evidentiary, but I'll do it right now.
Now, we've got an oblate change himself to nuclear power plants. But I know that we want to go there.
Yeah, but you can see
Because
because they're the green.
They're bringing the Catholic faith to places unreached.
But I think that also goes to their braveness too. They're not afraid to go in places that they, like Haiti, and live amongst the people and have to deal with the same health issues that they're dealing with, and the same food that they're eating, and living with them.
It may not be entirely unique, but it may be something that kind of whittles it down. Are there many organizations that do the scope of work that you'll do both abroad and domestically, like a combination of the two? Because there may be some that only that only reach internationally.
The redemptors or the ascensions. I mean, you know.
That's not, it's not a bad thing. It
Right.
helps people frame what you are, and we can drill into
It's
what's
not
actually
like
unique.
the Jesuits are the smart ones who have colleges.
If you're framing-
You're not that.
If you're framing it, is there anybody that does more than US or globally the opposite? One way to try and frame it might be, for sure, there is not another congregation or that does more. There's not like another tier above it, so it's definitely in the top tier. And I think you can probably make a pretty strong claim that a lot of other congregations have a specialized, like Jesuits, very clear what they do.
Right.
Redemptorists, they preach.
Yep.
Franciscans, they do this. I mean, so if you, the thing is, you get into these claims that, then it seems like it's better, the Albans are better than Jesuits, and that won't stand up, because they'll get knocked
Sure,
down.
yeah, I think it goes back to,
Donors wouldn't stand for it either,
Yeah.
because
This-
I know a Jesuit as much as
Yeah,
I
but I
have a
think you
feeling
can
this is gonna
research
be-
it, you can research and try and maybe see if that claim stands up.
Well, I feel like those are going to be evidentials of the claim
Yeah.
number 14. And like that's, I think, where we want to maybe dig in the second half a little bit. It's like, we're saying something really, really big. Our Blades are one of the most widely impactful Catholic missionary groups. And we need to make sure we bust out all the evidentials for that, because we need to show how coverage and also geographic coverage, things like that. But I have a feeling that's gonna end up, usually what do we wanna say, right? We say the
Something-
biggest, the best, but we done it the longest, we do it the best.
Right. Something that adds into that, I think Michelle brought up in terms of going around the world globally is they also leave and they train missionaries future, but they also have a history of martyrdom. And there's a lot of people that have died
That's
in
what
place.
Yeah.
And that is part of why there is a weekly and monthly schedule around the world of being remembered in prayer. So if you try to get at an overall cluster of evidentiary, I think it is unique in that respect,
Yeah.
when you add in the martyrdom.
Yeah.
And the other thing about the oblates is they don't have themselves in the back. People don't know who they are.
They're very
You know who
honest,
the Jesuits
very-
Yeah.
are, you know
Yeah.
these other organizations, but if
How would you say that? That's really good.
they do not brag about themselves.
Known for humility.
Yeah, they're very.
Yeah, they're like-
Humble, quiet, you know, and,
They're like the
Under the radar.
invisible, they're like the invisible giant.
Because they're with the people.
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think that kind of expands on what Mike was saying is, yes, there's a wide reach, they're in a lot of places, but a lot of times the things they're doing are just very simple and routine. You know, like the Indian reservation, a couple of us had the opportunity to visit there, and it's this awful, desolate place. And all the oblates are doing there are just saying mass, doing baptisms, and, you know, doing the same things that any other parish would do. There's not many other people or orders that would go there.
Maybe
So I
there's a
guess
value
it's like-
statement too in that, you always have to think about, and I think it's okay, there's nothing wrong with what the Jesuits and Franciscans do, but you can make a statement of belief by saying that there's no area that is too far gone, for lack of a better term, right? There's no one who's not worthy of being reached.
Right.
And that's a belief structure, right? That's not saying that like other organizations would say those aren't worthy of being reached, but it's something that people can actually align with and actually say. Just the fact that, other organizations will say, well, we believe that too, but they're not saying. The oblates maybe a strong enough value to say it. You see that, Ken? I think I would say we believe that there is no people. How would you say that?
It's almost like there's no, I don't know, it's sort of cliche, but like there's no spiritual need that's too small or too remote. You know?
Right.
I've been struggling with the word, how they treat people and how they treat people with respect. But there's like everybody is an important individual in their eyes and God. Not one person is better than the other.
Yeah,
And
well,
some of these lower areas
They
don't get
see-
treated the
They
same.
see Jesus in the poor. That's a statement that, what's his name? Santucci. Remember that story he told? And, they see Jesus' face in the poor.
I mean, do we need to have things that are this broad, or do we need to get down to a little bit more granular?
I think we still probably have, we'll get down granular in the second half of this. And first we'll rate them, kind of try to understand which ones rise to the top, and then we'll take the top. Usually there's a break in the scoring, like between the top and the rest of them, and then we'll actually get really granular as we go.